cyclical drill so that we're going back and forth. So we can start closer to the middle. We don't need to be at one end or the other. I start either with my Oberhau or Ansetzen. John counters with his bad Zornhau. And I took in. John steps back and blocks. I took in. John steps back and blocks. And now I'm going to push to get control of the bind. And when I do that, I'm going to bring my strong up onto John's weak to give me an advantage here. Which means he's going to zook in, and then I'm going to block. And now he's going to zook in, and I'm going to block, and now he's going to gain control of the bind, so I'm going to zook in, boom, zook in, boom. Everybody understand? So 2 zookins, and then change who's controlling the bind just by raising your tip and pushing over. Lifting your tip and keeping your hands in the same position does give you more strength on the other person's sword, but it removes your threat. That's the danger, which is where the zookin is useful. All right? That is the basic idea of the zookin. There are a number of other places where we use it. The most important thing is that the sword is not pointed at your face when you do a zookin. If the person is pointing their sword at your face and you try and do the zookin, then they're going to stab you in the face. We are going to do one more special case tonight, which is the false zookin. So this is where we act as though we are about to zookin, and then we don't. And how this works, I start with my Ansetzen or Oberhau. John does his Zornhau. We're still going to actually start with far distance, and he's above here, but I know that John knows what he's doing, so he might be trying to be tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to zookin, but as I do it, I'm also going to realign my edge onto John's flat. I'm actually pushing his sword over as I pull back. If he does not resist that, which is what we want, my point's going to end up on line with his face before I lose his blade. In which case, I now extend straight through and stab him in the face without actually losing the bind. Alright? So it's Ansetzen, almost Zornhau, start to pull back, he's following me with the zookin, I just extend through. Now, because I'm doing a pull and then an extension, that thrust forward is all with the arms, which means it's hard for me to control the force that I'm hitting John with. So with that one, stop a couple of inches short of the face. If we're using our body, it's a lot easier to, like if we're stepping in, it's a lot easier to let the pressure off. But if you're jamming your sword in with your arms, it's really hard to reduce the amount of force you're applying to that. Does that make sense to everybody? Alright, so one time the other way, John does the Oberhau, and I Zornhau up here, he starts to pull, and I follow his blade down, and he extends along and stabs me in the face. Go! And without the bind. And this is in some ways a little bit riskier, and it's dependent more on visual cues than feeling cues. But if we do it, it's really, really effective. So the idea is more or less the same. I'm going to start with my Ansetzen. John's going to start to do the two high block. And reset for a second. When we're doing this, I can see that John's tip is coming in high right now, right? So at this point, I'm going to zookin before we make blade contact and come in with the Ansetzen on the other side. The reason why this is more effective is because he's more likely to overcommit to that action if he's expecting to encounter resistance and then doesn't. But also, once he's made contact, he has the fooling clues to know what I'm doing. If there's no contact, he doesn't have that information. So it's here. Again, with this one, the stab is coming in while he's still stepping in. So stop a couple of inches short of the face. Does that make sense to everybody? And as always, we can do it in super slow motion if it's helpful. But this one, we need to do it smoothly, not break it down into little bits. So it's extend, boom, boom. All right? Give that a go a few times. mood I did.
These are terrible.
Bring this sort of across again.
If I straighten, I'm worried about poking in the face, which is why it is. That's all. But if I extend, I'm going that way.
If I step into it, that's no problem.
No, it's not.
Because you have giant legs.
That might help.
And he has a really long sword, so.
No.
Now, I'm worried about what you do. Because you have a little more to lose.
Probably not anymore.
That'd be pretty quick if you had a slow speed.
I know, right?
But I don't want to keep them responsible.
I knew it, put myself in danger.
I decided if we should do the half sorting system, or something like half sorting before the water break, or just leave it.
Oh, no!
Sorry?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'd rather do more cooking than switch to something else.
What?
All right, we're gonna do one more cooking before the water break, just because I don't want to start dirt vexel and then barely start it and then break. So we're going to do a tricky trick. So John's going to start in Albert or Flug, I don't really care what, and I'm going to start in Fontag. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my attack. I'm going to actually be the attacker, even though he's in Flug here. And I'm going to come in with a really big strike to the head as a cut. And what I'm actually inviting is for John to block with half sorting. If you haven't seen this before, don't worry, we'll muddle through. So when I come in with that big strike, John's going to come up at the mid blade, and then his goal is to now take a second step in and bring the point into my face. Boom, like so. All right, does that make sense to everybody? So this is, I'm creating this, here's my strike, boom. And John wants to block it here. But what I'm going to do is when he comes in to do the half sorting block, I'm going to do the tsuken. And again, we're going to do this without blade contact. Boom, underneath. All right? And it's lovely because he's really committed to that. Boom, and there's nothing there for him to contact. I really want to sell that this is a hard strike because I want him throwing himself into that defense. Does that make sense to everybody? Has everybody done the half sorting block before? Yes? All right, awesome. So give that a go. Again, stop just short because he's throwing himself at your sword.
This one's sneaky.
But I'm already here, I can't step with my cooking.
Yeah, you don't need to step with your sword.
Okay. Yeah.
You're coming in,
Pretty effective.
cutting, and then finishing with the drying. Yeah. Same stuff. But you have to do the first step. It's important.
Here we go.
Asking me now.
Putting a sword up in your
You're gonna
house
like
or
this?
screw.
Sorry. You're gonna do like this?
Carry on, I'm just trying to.
Why are you blocked over here?
I think you're going to top work.
Alright.
No, I'm the one.
Basically,
Like this.
Doesn't mean you have to, you're gonna start this.
Okay, my phone is probably tapping. Okay.
I mean, this comes in.
So they want to call me.
Wait.
Another step.
Don't forget your step. You have to step with that one too.
Otherwise, you're too far away.
You also have to actually defend yourself.
Bring your sword more towards him rather than straight up.
Yeah. So if Clay is a chump when he's doing this, instead of having a clever plan. Okay.
You come out.
Where you're gonna end up is here. I wanna be as close to his hills as possible. If I'm up high, he's just gonna miss. I wanna beat him before he generates any power.
Yes, and that's the other thing. If he's swinging with actual circular force with that strike, and he hits with the weak, boom, on here, he's actually bringing a lot of power into that, which isn't really going to injure John, but it sucks to get hit that way. You know what I mean? It's just like that shock to the system. Ow! Where what John actually wants to do is do that to me by striking close to here. So, but of course, it's my nasty, dirty trick. Oh, it's that sword. All right. I love this sword.
What? We are okay.
I'm happy that Talking Man is happy.
What?
Just for this.
Oh, okay.
I should have said thawed.
That was a good idea.
Yes. Yes, I did not see that coming. I was a little bit surprised by the previous part, but I was in spite of being surprised. All right. If you've done this to your satisfaction, take a break, have some water.
I think so.
Manuscripts, when they talk about Sukken and Dirk Wechsel, they use the terms interchangeably. Sukken actually literally means something like twitching, although I was talking to a German woman the other day that said it's like shrugging your shoulders kind of thing. But we usually use it as pulling, given the way that it's described. For Sukken, Dirk Wechsel means change through, and it is used in similar circumstances, but it is a little bit different. And some of the manuscripts make a clear distinction. But because they are very similar, there are places where you can do either one equally well, but usually there is a slight difference in which one will work better. So we're going to look at that right from the get-go, and we're starting with the same thing. I come in with the Ansetsen, and John's going to do a bad Zornhau, but this time, instead of being high, he's going to push past. His point has gone by my face, and is pointed above my right shoulder-ish. He's pushing my tip further down so I can feel that. When he pushes, I'm going to let the push make my tip drop and bring my hands high. And then all I'm going to do is with my left foot, I'm going to step diagonally out at about a 45-degree angle, and my sword will go right into John's armpit, which is a beautiful place to stab somebody. Now, we can do that really broken down with Ansetsen, 2 hard Zornhau, change through, step. But ideally, we want it to flow smoothly, and I want to actually let John's force push me into the action. So he pushes my tip down, I use that pressure to pull my hands up, and then my hands moving up pulls me into the step. I don't want to hurt John, my sword is really mean, it wants to stab him, and it's pulling me that way. Alright? Just like that. Does that make sense to everybody? Once from the other side. Like that. Alright, go. Yeah, like we learned the technique that you guys just did by mistake. That looks cool. No, that's called, I missed my defense. Missed his cue. That's called great something.
I'm not so very good with and then rub.
That's the try to keep your arms a little bit straighter. Try bending your elbow there. So when you go up, really lift this this hand up a little bit. Yeah.
Still have to pull it a little bit. Well,
Yes, that's better.
One more time, and then
Yes, excellent.
you like that food?
What's that?
You like the it was fair nothing.
Totally do.
make it a stab, and you can make it kind of
Stabs are deadlier.
You're trying to back it up a little bit. So you're there. And you're coming.
All right.
My sword is longer, but I hope to pull it down.
Tickle the elbows.
That's fine.
Okay, so you're moving on.
Yeah.
You could, but it is easier to keep it here. Keep that protecting you more. Okay. Now I know what to do. Sorry, you stepped in it.
I did.
The one time I stabbed, eh?
Awesome. All right. The Dirk Vexel is diverse and manifold. There's actually more variations of the Dirk Vexel than there are of the Sukin. And this is only one of them. This is sort of the basic idea. But we can do the Dirk Vexel in a whole bunch of other circumstances as well. What I would like to start with in that is we're going to go back to our old 5-step drill, and we're going to do the circular change through in ox. So this drill, for those of you who don't remember, we're going to still start with an Ansetsen, countered by a Zornhau. And I'm going to do the first winding. So I'm rotating up into ox, switching into the thumb grip before I rotate. My point's now pointed at John's face. John's now going to do an open abgenomen. When he does it here, he has to lift up fairly high to get my point off his face. And he's going to start to step forward, and then I'm going to bring my tip around in a circle on line with his face. This is the change through. Now, normally, when the person is stepping in towards you, you want to go around their upper hand because that's a shorter distance. If I'm trying to go around here, John's arm is kind of in the way sooner, so I need to go a little bit further. But I can go in either direction. I like to do it this way because I'm drawing a big C, and my name starts with C, so it's easier. All right? When you're doing this, when you're doing your open abgenomen, help your partner out. So if I'm doing the wrong side of this. All right, I do the first winding. So John's going to come in towards me with the pommel forward, and he's going to pause there to let me do that change through. Of course, we want to make it work smoothly eventually, but the important thing is that he's coming pommel forward instead of holding his sword crosswise in some kind of weird way. He's coming with the pommel, which makes it easier to and sensible to choose to do the change through in this case. One other little thing about it, we want to keep our hands, the motion of our hands fairly small, and we want to keep our hands high. If our distance ends up being much closer, boom, and I wind here, I can still change through if I keep my hands high. I'm just not going to maybe get his face. I'm going to get a little bit lower down. And I'm still putting my sword between his sword and me. But if I try and bring my whole hands down, first of all, it's much harder to aim like this, but now I can't get the point on line, and I'm not protecting my face. So keep your hands high, and just bring the sword underneath, like so. Make sense? Give it a go. All right, everybody got this very easily. Fantastic. Move into crawl. Crawl is the not a guard. So John attacks me. I do the Zornhau. John does the first winding, and I'm going to step in and lift up like this crosswise. I'm not actually trying to come in with the pommel. I'm not doing anything except for lifting his point away from my face. All right? Like so. Here, John can try and circle around, but either way he goes, it's a fairly big motion, and I'm actually really close to his tip. So the sensible thing for him to do at this point is to just do the tsuken as I'm lifting up. It's the same thing. It's much easier for him to just pull back and bring the point online underneath. And of course, as with anything, ideally we want to turn that into a smooth action. So John attacks, I counter, he winds, and I start to lift. And he can actually even use my lift to help feed the tsuken a little bit. Make sense? All right, give that a try, just a few times.
First pointer.
Okay. You guys' arms better.
Ron? Because they misread the manual.
Hard to put on your when you can't read it.
And sets in. Zornhau. Winding. John pushes down. I step in, push the pommel around, and stop just short of hitting him in the head so that I don't actually injure him. Snapping means snapping, and we're letting the blade snap over. Everybody understand that? We'll do it from the other side. So John attacks. I counter, he does the high winding, I push down, and he lets that feed him into that action. You really want to get the pommel forward and then around. If you start kind of doing both at once, your sword's going to wobble all over the place. It makes the aiming much harder. We want it to be as straightforward as possible. One other little detail for helping your partner. John attacks. Boom, I do this one, honey, he does the winding. When I'm pushing down, I'm going to push down and across. If I start to push back into his leg, he can no longer do the schnappen. If he does the schnappen here, oops, he's going to get cut at the same time. He can feel me doing that though, and he knows he shouldn't do the schnappen, so he won't. Which means, for practicing this exercise, don't push back into the leg. Boom, boom, I push this way, oh, like a chump. All right? Do that.
After you.
Actually, one little detail. When you're coming, you're pushing up and around with your right hand a
I
little
should do
bit.
it this way.
Use
Okay.
that other hand.
Oh,
Yeah, I should start wearing my gloves. Yeah, and I have particularly caustic
I'm trying to do this, not to do this.
sweat and stuff.
That's like the name.
Yeah. Not awesome turtle.
So,
Now, we're going to do one last exercise with the dirt vexel, and I realize we're rewinding kind of, but this one is going back a bit and it's using some of what we did last week with windings. So, again, we want to be doing a dirt vexel where we're moving from the outside to the inside so that we're regaining control of the threat. And this is one where it is actually okay to use it when the person's threatening you because you're trying to offset their threat. So what we're going to look at here is I'm going to do an Ansetsen, John's going to do a Zornhau. I'm going to do a 5th winding, John's going to do a 6th winding. So he's going to, step in and wind around, outside winding. Boom, this one here.
even one.
Yes, that's right. So now his point's on my face. What I'm going to do is raise my tip to get that point out of the way. Although really, I could just be pushing out or something like that. But I'm moving the point out of the way, and John is going to circle around underneath, and he can bring it back into contact with my blade, but he really doesn't need to. He just needs to get that point on line and get himself into a position where he's got that structure between my sword and him. So typically for this, I am actually ending up not threatening him, but he's moving from the outside back into the center regardless. All right? So again, it's Ansetsen, Zornhau, 5th winding, 6th winding, try and offset the 6th winding, and get stabbed in the face by the change through. Make sense to everybody? Awesome. Give it a go. Yes.
Second?
So you're going to do this one here. And now he's going to raise this tip, and now you're going to circle around underneath there. Of course, you can also do this with the tsukin, but I like to change through better. Yeah, stepping with the outside winding rather than with the change through.
Can we change through? And you're going to push off.